The orc woman's wrists burned where the rope bit into her skin, and the wooden sign hanging from her neck felt heavier than any weapon she had ever carried into battle. Worthless. She had read the word carved into the wood at least 100 times, since they had left her here at the crossroads, where 3 dirt roads met in the middle of nowhere. Her former clan had bound her hands in front of her body, looped the sign around her neck, and walked away without a single backward glance. No farewell, no explanation beyond what everyone already knew. She had shown mercy to a human child during a raid, and that single act of compassion had branded her a traitor to her people. The sun climbed higher in the sky, and Varka tried to ignore the thirst building in her throat. She sat in the dirt at the center of the crossroads, her green skin already dusty from the dry earth. Her tusks ached where they protruded from her lower jaw, a dull throb that matched the pain in her wrists. She was strong, had always been strong, but the ropes were tied with knowledge of orc strength, wrapped and knotted in ways that made breaking free impossible without someone to help untie them. No one would help her. Humans feared orcs, hated them for decades of border raids and skirmishes. Her own people had cast her out. She was alone in the truest sense of the word. The sound of wagon wheels on packed dirt reached her ears, and Varka tensed. She watched the eastern road, where a small wooden wagon drawn by a single brown horse emerged from the tree line. The driver was human, she could tell from the distance, and her stomach tightened with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. Fear because humans had every reason to kill an orc they found helpless on the road. Hope because she needed water, needed food, needed these damned ropes cut before exposure finished what her clan had started. The wagon slowed as it approached, and Varka got her first clear look at the driver. He was young, maybe in his middle 20s, with sun-darkened skin and brown hair that needed cutting. He wore simple homespun clothes, a farmer by the look of him, and his face showed more caution than hatred as he pulled the horse to a stop about 20 feet from where she sat. "Well," he said, his voice carrying clearly in the still morning air, "that is not something you see every day." Varka said nothing. What could she say? The sign around her neck spoke clearly enough. The man climbed down from the wagon seat, moving slowly, keeping his hands visible. He was tall for a human, broad-shouldered from physical labor, and he carried himself with a careful awareness that suggested he had been a soldier once. He stopped about 10 feet away from her, close enough to read the sign, far enough to run if she proved dangerous. "Worthless," he read aloud, then met her eyes. "Who decided that? My clan." Varka's voice came out rougher than she intended, dry from thirst and disuse. "I showed mercy where I should have shown strength. This is my punishment. Mercy to whom? A human child." During a raid on a border settlement. The man studied her for a long moment, and Varka could see him thinking, weighing what she had told him against what he knew of orcs. Finally, he took a few steps closer and crouched down so they were at eye level. "My name is Parker Sutton," he said. "I have a farm about 3 miles west of here. I am going to cut those ropes and give you water. After that, you can choose whether to go or stay, but I cannot leave someone tied up like an animal at a crossroads." Varka's throat tightened with an emotion she could not name. "Why would you help me?" Parker pulled a folding knife from his pocket and opened it carefully. "Because mercy should not be punished. It should be rewarded. Now hold still." He moved behind her, and Varka felt the ropes loosen as he sawed through them. The relief when they fell away was immediate and intense. She pulled her hands forward, rubbing at the raw skin where the rope had chafed. Parker lifted the sign over her head and tossed it into the wagon bed, then retrieved a water skin and handed it to her. "Drink slowly," he advised. "You look like you have been here a while." Varka obeyed, forcing herself to take small sips even though she wanted to drain the entire container. The water was cool and clean, the best thing she had ever tasted. When she finally lowered the skin, she found Parker watching her with an expression she could not quite read. "Thank you," she said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. "You are welcome." He gestured to the wagon. "Like I said, my farm is 3 miles west. You are welcome to come with me, rest up, figure out what you want to do next. Or I can leave you some supplies and you can head whichever direction you choose. Your choice entirely." Varka looked down each of the 3 roads. North led deeper into orc territory, where she would be killed on sight as a traitor. East and south were human lands, where she would be killed on sight as an orc. West led to the farm of a man who had shown her more kindness in 5 minutes than her own people had shown her in a lifetime. "I will come with you," she said. "If the offer is genuine." "It is." Parker stood and held out his hand to help her up. After a moment's hesitation, Varka took it, letting him pull her to her feet. His hand was warm and calloused from work, and he did not flinch from touching her green skin. The wagon ride to Parker's farm passed in relative silence. Varka sat in the back among sacks of grain and farming tools while Parker drove. She watched the landscape roll by, noting the carefully tended fields, the neat stone walls marking property boundaries, the distant smoke from chimneys suggesting other farms in the area. This was frontier land, where humans pushed up against orc territory, always ready for the next raid or skirmish. Parker's farm, when they reached it, was modest but well-maintained. A small wooden house with a stone chimney, a barn that had seen better days but still stood straight, fields of wheat and corn in various stages of growth, a vegetable garden near the house, and a chicken coop from which the sounds of agitated birds emerged. Everything spoke of hard work and careful management. "Home," Parker announced, pulling the wagon to a stop near the barn. "It is not much, but it is mine." He climbed down and began unhitching the horse, moving with the easy efficiency of someone who had done this task 1,000 times. Varka hopped down from the wagon bed and stood awkwardly, unsure what to do with herself. She was a warrior, trained in battle and raiding, not farming and peaceful living. This world of crops and livestock was entirely foreign to her. "You can wash up at the pump over there," Parker said, nodding toward a hand pump near the house. "I imagine you would like to get the road dust off. When you are done, come inside. I will make something to eat." Varka approached the pump as if it might bite her, then worked the handle until water gushed forth. She drank again, then washed her face and arms, scrubbing away the dirt and grime from her time at the Crossroads. The cool water felt wonderful on her skin, and she took her time, letting herself enjoy this simple pleasure. When she finally entered the house, she found it as neat and orderly as the farm outside. One main room served as kitchen and living space, with a stone fireplace, a wooden table with 4 chairs, shelves holding dishes and supplies, and a few personal touches that suggested Parker lived here alone. A doorway led to what she assumed was a bedroom. Parker stood at the stove, stirring something in a pot that smelled incredible. "Vegetable stew," he explained without looking up. "Nothing fancy, but it will fill you up. Have a seat." Varka sat at the table, hyper-aware of how out of place she felt. She was an orc warrior in a human farmer's kitchen, and nothing about this situation made sense. Yet Parker moved around his home with complete ease, showing no sign of fear or discomfort at having her there. "Why are you doing this?" The question burst out of her before she could stop it. "You know what I am. What my people have done to yours. You should fear me, hate me, not feed me stew in your home." Parker ladled stew into 2 bowls and brought them to the table, sitting across from her. I was a soldier for 3 years, he said quietly. Fought in the border wars against orc raiders. Killed my share of your people, watched my share of friends die. When my service ended, I came out here to farm because I was tired of killing, tired of hating, tired of the whole endless cycle of violence. He picked up his spoon but did not eat yet, looking at her directly. You showed mercy to a human child. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are. The sign around your neck was wrong. You are not worthless. You are brave enough to choose compassion over cruelty, even when it cost you everything. That is the opposite of worthless. Varka's eyes burned with tears she refused to shed. She picked up her own spoon and tried the stew, buying herself time to regain control of her emotions. It was delicious, rich with vegetables and herbs, seasoned perfectly. She ate slowly, savoring each bite. They finished the meal in comfortable silence, and afterward, Parker showed her the barn. You can sleep in the loft if you want privacy, he offered. There is clean hay up there, and I can bring you some blankets. Or there is a spare room in the house, though it is mostly storage right now. The barn is fine, Varka said quickly. The idea of sleeping inside his house felt too intimate, too presumptuous. I am used to rougher conditions than a hayloft. Fair enough. Parker climbed the ladder to the loft and began arranging hay into a makeshift bed while Varka watched from below. I need to work in the south field this afternoon, checking on the corn. You are welcome to rest or walk around or help if you feel up to it. No obligations either way. Varka considered this. She was exhausted both physically and emotionally, but the idea of lying in the loft while Parker worked outside felt wrong. What kind of help do you need? Parker descended the ladder with a smile. Mostly looking for damage from insects or disease, pulling any weeds that have gotten too bold. I can show you what to look for if you are interested. I am interested. They spent the afternoon in the cornfield, and Parker proved to be a patient teacher. He showed her how to examine the stalks for signs of problems, how to distinguish between different types of weeds, how to remove them without damaging the corn's roots. The work was simple but satisfying, and Varka found herself relaxing into the rhythm of it. You are a quick learner, Parker observed as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. Ever done farm work before? Never. In my clan, I was a warrior. We raided human settlements for supplies and glory. Varka pulled up a particularly stubborn weed and tossed it aside. I was good at it. Strong, fast, skilled with weapons. My worth was measured in how many enemies I could defeat. What changed? Varka was quiet for a moment, remembering that day with perfect clarity. The raid on the settlement. We swept through it quickly, and most of the humans fled or were killed. I was searching a house when I found a child hiding under a bed. A girl, maybe 6 years old, terrified out of her mind. She paused, pulling another weed mechanically. I should have killed her or left her for someone else to deal with. Instead, I told her to stay quiet and hidden until we left. Then I moved on to the next house. Someone saw you do it, my cousin. She reported me to the clan leader. Showing mercy to the enemy is considered weakness, and weakness cannot be tolerated. They debated killing me outright but decided exile was worse. Death would have been quick. Exile means dying slowly, alone, knowing your own people found you unworthy of life. Parker stopped working and looked at her directly. Your people are wrong. Choosing not to kill a terrified child is not weakness. It is humanity. Or, I suppose in your case, orcity. Despite everything, Varka laughed. It was a short, surprised sound, but genuine. Orcity is not a word. It should be. Parker grinned at her, and something in Varka's chest warmed at the sight. Come on, we have done enough for today. Let's get cleaned up and have some dinner. The days developed a pattern. Varka slept in the barn loft on a bed of hay that became more comfortable each night, as Parker brought her additional blankets and even a pillow. She woke with the sun and helped Parker with the morning chores, feeding chickens, collecting eggs, tending the vegetable garden, checking on the various crops. The work was entirely different from anything she had done before, but she found satisfaction in it, a sense of purpose that had nothing to do with violence or conquest. Parker taught her how to cook simple meals, laughing gently when she oversalted soup or burned bread. He showed her how to mend clothes and repair tools, skills she had never needed as a warrior. In turn, she helped him with tasks that required strength, moving heavy equipment, clearing rocks from fields, repairing the barn roof. They talked while they worked, tentative at first, then with growing ease. Parker told her about his childhood in a village far to the east, about losing his parents to illness, about joining the army because he had nowhere else to go. He described battles he had fought with clinical detachment, never glorifying the violence, never pretending it was anything but tragic. Varka shared stories of her own childhood, of growing up in a clan where strength was everything, where showing emotion was seen as weakness. She described the training all orc children received, the brutal tests they had to pass to be considered adults, the constant pressure to prove themselves worthy of the clan's continued support. "It sounds exhausting," Parker observed one evening as they sat on his porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. "Never being allowed to just be yourself." "It was all I knew," Varka replied. "I thought it was normal that all people lived that way." Learning that humans value things like compassion and mercy, that you see them as strengths rather than weaknesses, has been strange. "We are not perfect," Parker said with a slight smile. "Humans have plenty of our own problems, but I like to think we try to be better than our worst impulses." "Not all humans. Some see orcs as monsters to be exterminated." "True. And not all orcs see humans as enemies, clearly." He glanced at her. "You saved that child. I have to imagine you are not the only orc who has ever questioned the constant fighting." Varka considered this. "Perhaps. But if there are others, they hide it better than I did." 2 weeks passed, then 3. Varka's rope burns healed, leaving faint scars around her wrists that she sometimes caught herself touching. Her body, hardened by years of warrior training, adapted well to the physical demands of farm work. She grew comfortable with the rhythms of this new life, with the simple pleasure of growing things rather than destroying them. But she was also increasingly aware of Parker in ways that had nothing to do with gratitude or friendship. The way his shoulders moved when he worked in the fields, muscles shifting under sun-darkened skin. The sound of his laugh when she said something that amused him. The careful kindness in his eyes when he looked at her, as if she was something precious rather than monstrous. It was wrong, she told herself. Humans and orcs did not fall in love. The very idea was absurd, taboo, impossible. Yet her heart refused to listen to logic. One afternoon, about a month after Parker had found her at the Crossroads, Varka was working in the vegetable garden when she heard voices from the front of the house. She stood, wiping dirt from her hands, and walked around to find Parker talking to 2 human men on horseback. They were clearly soldiers or guards of some kind, wearing leather armor and carrying weapons. Their expressions hardened when they saw Varka, hands moving instinctively toward sword hilts. "That is an orc," one of them said, as if Parker might not have noticed. "Her name is Varka," Parker replied calmly. "She works for me." "You have an orc working your farm?" The second soldier looked incredulous. "Are you insane? She will kill you in your sleep and take everything you own." "She has had a month to do that and has not," Parker pointed out. "Was there something specific you gentlemen needed? Or did you just stop by to critique my hiring practices?" The first soldier tore his gaze away from Varka with obvious effort. "We are making rounds, warning folks that there have been increased orc scouting parties seen in the area. Everyone needs to be alert for potential raids." "I appreciate the warning," Parker said. "Anything else? You should get rid of that creature before it brings trouble down on you." The soldier looked at Varka with undisguised disgust. Her kind cannot be trusted. Varka felt her temper flare but forced herself to remain calm. These men were looking for an excuse to see her as a threat, and she would not give them one. Parker's voice went cold in a way Varka had never heard before. "Varka has shown me nothing but loyalty and hard work. She is welcome on my land for as long as she chooses to stay. Now, if you are finished insulting my friend, I have crops to tend." The soldiers exchanged glances, clearly disapproving, but they were not here to make arrests, only to warn. With final hostile looks at Varka, they rode off. "I am sorry," Varka said when they were gone. "I am bringing you trouble. Those men will spread word that you harbor an orc. Your neighbors will turn against you." Parker shook his head. "My neighbors and I are cordial but not close. I chose this farm specifically because it is far enough from other homesteads that I could have privacy. What they think of my choices matters very little to me. Still, if orc raiding parties are active in the area, my presence here could make you a target. They might think you are holding me prisoner, or that you are conspiring with the enemy. Then we will deal with that if it happens." Parker met her eyes steadily. "I am not going to send you away because of what might happen, Varka. You have a place here for as long as you want it." "Do you understand?" Varka's breath caught. The intensity in his gaze made her heart race, and she found herself taking a step closer to him without conscious thought. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why does it matter so much to you that I stay?" Parker was quiet for a long moment, and Varka watched emotions flicker across his face, too quick to name. Finally, he said, "Because this farm feels like a home with you here. Before, it was just a place I lived. Now it is something more." The air between them felt charged with possibility, and Varka's pulse pounded in her ears. She wanted to close the remaining distance between them, to touch him, to see if his skin was as warm as it looked. But fear held her back. Fear of rejection, of crossing a line that could never be uncrossed, of wanting something she could never have. Before either of them could speak again, a distant sound reached them. Screaming, coming from the direction of the nearest neighboring farm. Parker's expression shifted immediately to alertness. "Stay here," he said, already moving toward the barn. "Absolutely not." Varka followed him. "If there is danger, you need someone who knows how to fight." Parker grabbed a sword from where it hung on the barn wall, old but well-maintained, clearly a remnant from his soldier days. He tossed Varka a long-handled axe used for splitting wood. "Can you use that in a fight?" Varka tested the weight and balance. "Well enough." They ran toward the screaming, covering the quarter-mile to the neighboring farm in minutes. What they found made Varka's blood run cold. 5 orc raiders, wearing the markings of a clan she did not recognize, were ransacking the property. A human woman cowered in a doorway while 2 raiders threatened her with weapons. The other 3 were loading supplies into sacks. "Hey!" Parker's shout drew every eye to them. "Leave her alone!" One of the raiders, a large male with a scarred face, laughed. "Brave human, stupid but brave. We will kill you quickly if you run now. Stay and fight, and your death will be slow." Then his eyes landed on Varka, and his expression shifted to confusion. You are Varka, cast out by the Stone Fang clan for weakness. What are you doing with this human?" "I am defending his home and his neighbors," Varka replied, moving to stand beside Parker. "Leave now and no one has to die." The scarred raider's confusion turned to contempt. You fight with humans against your own kind. You are worse than worthless. You are a traitor to your entire race." "I am done with raiding and killing," Varka said. "I chose a different path. You can choose one too. Leave in peace. We leave with our plunder, or we leave with your heads as trophies." The raider gestured to his companions. "Kill them both." The fight happened fast. 2 raiders charged Parker while 3 came at Varka. Parker moved with the trained precision of a soldier, his sword blocking and parrying, finding gaps in his opponent's defenses. But he was 1 against 2, and Varka could see him being pushed back. Varka met her attackers with the axe, using its reach to keep them at bay. She had trained for combat since childhood, and her muscle memory took over. She ducked under a sword swing, brought the axe around in a brutal arc that caught 1 raider in the side, sending him stumbling back with a cry of pain. The other 2 pressed harder, trying to overwhelm her through sheer aggression. Out of the corner of her eye, Varka saw Parker take a cut to his arm, saw him falter. Rage flooded through her, and she fought with renewed ferocity. She hooked the axe head behind 1 raider's knee and yanked, sending him crashing to the ground, then reversed her grip and slammed the handle into his temple. He went still. The remaining raider facing her hesitated, suddenly aware that she was far more skilled than he had anticipated. Varka used his uncertainty against him, feinting left then striking right, the axe blade catching him across the chest. He fell, gasping. She spun toward Parker, who had managed to wound one of his opponents but was bleeding from his arm and looking unsteady. Varka threw herself into the fight, the axe whistling through the air. The 2 raiders facing Parker suddenly had to contend with both of them, and the tide turned quickly. Within moments, both were on the ground, disarmed and defeated. The scarred leader, who had been gathering supplies rather than fighting, assessed the situation and made the smart choice. He dropped the sacks and ran, disappearing into the trees. Varka's breathing came hard and fast, adrenaline still flooding her system. She looked at the 4 raiders on the ground. 2 were unconscious, 2 were wounded but alive. None were dead, though they easily could have been. Parker was clutching his wounded arm, blood seeping between his fingers. The human woman emerged from her doorway, eyes wide with shock. "You saved me," she said, looking between Parker and Varka. "Both of you. The orc saved me." "Her name is Varka," Parker said, echoing what he had told the soldiers earlier. "And yes, she did. Can you ride to the nearest town and bring the militia? These raiders need to be secured before they wake up." The woman nodded and ran for the small stable behind her house. Moments later, she rode off on a brown mare, headed south. Varka turned to Parker, alarm spiking when she saw how much blood had soaked his sleeve. "Let me see." "It is not that bad," Parker protested, but he let her examine the wound anyway. The cut was deep but clean, slicing through the flesh of his upper arm. It would need stitches. "Back to your farm," Varka ordered. "I can stitch this closed." They walked back quickly, Parker leaning on Varka more than he probably wanted to admit. Once in his kitchen, she sat him down and retrieved the needle and thread he kept for mending clothes. She had stitched wounds before, on herself and other warriors after battles. Her hands were steady as she worked, though her heart raced every time Parker flinched. "You could have died," she said quietly, tying off the last stitch, "if I had not been there. But you were there." Parker looked up at her, his face pale from blood loss but his eyes clear. "We protected that woman together. We saved her life." "You do realize what this means," Varka said. "I fought against orcs to defend humans. If word of this spreads, if that raider who escaped reports what happened, I will be hunted by every clan in the region, not just exiled, actively hunted. Then we make sure you are protected." Parker reached up with his good arm and took her hand. Varka, I am not going to let anything happen to you. I swear it. The touch of his hand on hers sent electricity through Varka's entire body. She looked down at their joined hands, green skin against sun-darkened tan, so different yet fitting together as if they were made for this. Parker, she began, then stopped, unsure how to continue. I know, he said softly. I feel it too. I have been trying not to, trying to tell myself it is just gratitude or friendship or anything other than what it actually is. But I cannot lie to myself anymore. I care about you, Varka. More than I should. More than makes sense. Varka's free hand trembled as she raised it to touch his face, her fingers gentle against his cheek. In my clan, in my entire culture, what I feel for you would be seen as the ultimate betrayal. Loving a human is unthinkable. Is that what this is? Parker asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Love? Varka thought about the past month, about every moment of kindness, every shared laugh, every time she had felt her heart lift at the sight of him. She thought about the terror that had gripped her when she saw him wounded, the absolute certainty that she would do anything to keep him safe. Yes, she said simply. I love you. I do not know how it happened or when, but it is true. You showed me that worth is not measured in strength or kills or the approval of a clan. You showed me that I could be valued just for being myself. How could I not fall in love with you? Parker stood, swaying slightly, and Varka moved to steady him. He cupped her face with his good hand, his thumb tracing the curve of her cheek just below her pointed ear. You are the strongest, bravest, most incredible person I have ever met, he said. When I found you at that crossroads, I thought I was just doing the right thing, helping someone in need. I never imagined you would change my entire life. I love you, Varka. Every part of you. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. Varka closed the remaining distance herself, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that felt like coming home. His lips were soft against hers, gentle and questioning. She kissed him back with all the emotion she had been holding inside, pouring weeks of longing and hope and fear into this one perfect moment. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Parker smiled at her with such open affection that Varka felt her eyes burn with tears. What do we do now? She asked. This is not a simple thing. Your people will not accept us. Mine will hunt me for betraying them. How do we build a life together when the whole world will stand against us? Parker guided her to sit at the table, then sat beside her, their hands still linked. We do it one day at a time, he said. We keep farming, keep living, keep choosing each other. Maybe some people will not understand, maybe some will actively oppose us, but we will also find allies. That woman we saved today saw you defend her. She will tell others. Over time, maybe we can change a few minds, show people that orcs and humans do not have to be enemies. That is optimistic. I am an optimist. Parker squeezed her hand. I have to be. The alternative is giving up, and I am not willing to do that. Not when I have finally found something, someone, worth fighting for. A commotion outside interrupted them. Voices, many of them, and the sound of horses. Varka and Parker exchanged glances and moved to the door. The militia had arrived, at least 20 armed men, along with the woman from the neighboring farm. They were surrounding the 4 captured raiders, who were now awake and bound. But some of the militia members were looking at Parker's house with expressions that made Varka's instincts scream danger. Parker stepped outside and Varka followed. One man, wearing a captain's insignia, approached them. Parker Sutton, the captain asked. That is me. I am Captain Morris. Mrs. Hendren here tells an interesting story. Says you and an orc woman fought off these raiders, saved her life. Says the orc woman fought against her own kind to protect humans. His eyes shifted to Varka. That would be you, I assume. It would, Varka confirmed, keeping her voice steady. Why? The captain's question was direct. Why would an orc defend humans? Varka glanced at Parker, drawing strength from his presence beside her. Because the right thing to do is not determined by what species someone belongs to. Those raiders were going to hurt Mrs. Hendren and steal her livelihood. Stopping them was right. It is that simple. Simple. The captain laughed, but it was not a friendly sound. Nothing about this is simple. I have spent 10 years fighting orcs on the border, lost good men to your kind. And now I am supposed to believe you are different because you chose not to participate in one raid. I did not just choose not to participate, Varka said, anger creeping into her voice. I actively fought against them. I risked my life to protect a human stranger. What more proof do you need? Captain, Mrs. Hendren spoke up. She is telling the truth. I saw it with my own eyes. She and Mr. Sutton fought together. She could have let those raiders kill us and take what they wanted. Instead, she defended me. She saved my life. The captain studied Varka for a long moment, clearly wrestling with decades of prejudice against what he was being told. Finally, he said, the raiders will be taken to stand trial. As for you, he looked at Varka, I am not sure what to do. By law, orcs found in human territory can be arrested or killed on sight, but you did save a civilian and I cannot ignore that. Then do not arrest her, Parker said firmly. She lives here on my farm with my permission. She works for me and has harmed no one. Let her be. You are harboring an enemy combatant. I am employing a farmhand who happens to be an orc. There is no law against that. The captain's jaw tightened. There should be. This is dangerous, Sutton. You are playing with fire. That is my choice to make. The standoff lasted several tense seconds. Finally, the captain shook his head. Fine. She can stay for now, but I will be watching this situation closely. One hint of trouble, one suggestion that she is a threat, and I will come back with enough men to ensure she is dealt with permanently. Understood, Parker said. The militia left, taking the captured raiders with them. Mrs. Hendren lingered long enough to thank Varka personally, gripping her hand with surprising strength for an older woman. You saved my life, she said simply. I will not forget that. And I will make sure others know what you did. After she left, Varka and Parker stood in the gathering darkness, processing everything that had happened. That went better than it could have, Parker observed. He threatened to kill me, but he did not, and Mrs. Hendren is on our side. Parker turned to face her fully. It is a start. Over the following weeks, word of what had happened spread through the region. Some people reacted with hostility, warning Parker that he was being foolish, that the orc would inevitably betray him. But others, particularly those who heard the story directly from Mrs. Hendren, reacted with cautious curiosity. A few even stopped by the farm to meet Varka, to see for themselves if the stories were true. Varka found these encounters uncomfortable, but managed them as best she could. She answered questions about her past, about why she had been exiled, about her decision to fight against the raiders. Some visitors left still suspicious, but others departed with thoughtful expressions, as if reconsidering long-held beliefs. Through it all, Varka and Parker grew closer. They worked side by side during the days, bringing in the harvest as summer turned to autumn. In the evenings, they sat together on the porch, talking or simply enjoying each other's company in comfortable silence. They stole kisses when they thought no one was watching, brief touches that left Varka yearning for more. Parker's arm healed cleanly, leaving a scar he wore with pride. A reminder of the day you saved my life, he said when Varka traced the mark with her fingers. We saved each other, she corrected. One evening in late autumn, as the first frost silvered the fields, Parker asked Varka to take a walk with him. They wandered away from the farm, following a small stream that wound through the property. The sunset painted the sky in shades of purple and gold, and the air was crisp and clean. "I have been thinking," Parker said as they walked, "about the future, about what we are building here." "As have I," Varka admitted, "though I confess I still struggle to imagine it sometimes. This life is so different from anything I thought I would have." Parker stopped walking and turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "Varka, when I found you at that crossroads, you had a sign around your neck that said you were worthless. But every day since, you have proven that sign was a lie. You are worth everything to me. You have made this farm a home, made my life mean something beyond just surviving." Varka's heart began to pound. "Parker, what are you saying?" He took a deep breath, and she saw nervousness in his eyes. "I am saying that I want this to be permanent. I want you here with me, not just as someone who works my farm or stays in my barn. I want you as my partner, my companion, my wife." Varka's breath caught. "Wife, I know it is complicated. I know there is no legal framework for a human and an orc to marry, and I know most people would see it as wrong or impossible. But I do not care what they think. I care about you, and I want to spend my life with you. So I am asking, Varka, will you marry me?" Tears spilled down Varka's cheeks before she could stop them. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking on the word. "Yes, I will marry you. I love you more than I knew it was possible to love anyone." Parker pulled her into his arms, holding her tight, and Varka buried her face against his shoulder, letting herself cry properly for the first time since he had found her. These were not tears of grief or pain, but of overwhelming joy, of finding something she had never dared to hope for. They held each other as the sun finished setting, as stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Finally, Varka pulled back enough to look at Parker's face. "How do we do this?" she asked. "Without legal recognition, without anyone to officiate, how do we make it real?" Parker smiled. "We make our own vows, before whatever gods or powers we believe in. We commit to each other with full hearts and clear intentions. That is what makes a marriage real, not a piece of paper or a ceremony. Though," he added thoughtfully, "I think I know someone who might be willing to officiate something unofficial." "Who?" "Mrs. Hendren. She has been a widow for 20 years, raised 4 children on her own, and has always been respected in the community. If she was willing to speak words over us, to witness our vows, I think that would mean something." They visited Mrs. Hendren the next day and found her surprisingly receptive to the idea. "You two have something special," she said, looking between them. "I saw it when you fought together to save me. You trust each other completely, you work as a unit. That is what marriage should be. I would be honored to speak over your union." The ceremony, such as it was, took place on Parker's farm on the first day of winter. Mrs. Hendren stood before them in the main room of the house, which they had decorated with evergreen branches and late-blooming wildflowers. No other guests attended. This was a private affair, meant only for the 3 of them and whatever powers governed the universe. Varka wore a simple dress that Mrs. Hendren had helped her make, dyed a deep green that complemented her skin. Parker wore his best clothes, his hair neatly trimmed, his face clean-shaven. They stood facing each other, hands joined, while Mrs. Hendren spoke. "We are gathered here in witness of something rare and precious," she began. "2 souls who have found each other across impossible divides. Parker Sutton, human farmer and former soldier. Varka, orc warrior turned peacemaker. You come from different worlds, different cultures, different peoples. Yet you have chosen to bridge those divides with love, with trust, with unwavering commitment to each other." She looked at Parker. "Do you take Varka as your wife, promising to stand beside her through whatever trials may come, to honor her, protect her, and cherish her for all your days?" "I do," Parker said firmly, his eyes never leaving Varka's face. Mrs. Hendren turned to Varka. "You take Parker as your husband, promising to stand beside him through whatever trials may come, to honor him, protect him, and cherish him for all your days." "I do," Varka replied, her voice strong despite the tears threatening to spill over. "Then, by the power vested in me by simple human decency and the belief that love transcends all boundaries, I declare you husband and wife. May your union be blessed with happiness, prosperity, and the strength to weather any storm." Parker leaned in and kissed Varka softly, and she kissed him back, feeling as if her heart might burst from the sheer fullness of this moment. When they broke apart, Mrs. Hendren was smiling. "I brought you a wedding gift," she said, pulling a folded piece of cloth from her bag. "It is not much, but I thought you might appreciate it." She unfolded the cloth to reveal a quilt, beautifully made, depicting a farm scene with two figures working side by side in the fields. One was clearly human, the other clearly an orc, their differences honored rather than hidden. "It is beautiful," Varka breathed, taking the quilt with reverent hands. "Thank you." "Use it in good health," Mrs. Hendren said, "and know that you have at least one neighbor who supports you fully." After she left, Varka and Parker sat together on the new quilt, spread across their bed. Parker had cleaned out the spare room and made it into a proper bedroom for them to share, and now they would spend their first night as husband and wife in this space they had created together. "I never thought this could happen," Varka said softly. "When my clan left me at that crossroads, I thought my life was over. I thought I would die alone, unmourned, forgotten. Instead, I found you. I found a home, a purpose, a future. How did I get so lucky?" Parker pulled her close, kissing her forehead. "I think we both got lucky. Two broken people who found each other and built something whole." That night, they made love for the first time, a tender and passionate joining that sealed their commitment to each other. Varka had never felt so safe, so cherished, so completely accepted as she did in Parker's arms. Every kiss, every touch, every whispered word of love reinforced the truth of what they had built together. Afterward, they lay tangled together under the wedding quilt, Varka's head resting on Parker's chest, his fingers tracing idle patterns on her green skin. "What do you think happens next?" Varka asked into the comfortable darkness. "For us, I mean. Do we just keep farming, keep living quietly, hoping the world leaves us alone?" Parker was quiet for a moment, thinking. "I think we keep living our truth. We keep showing people that different species can coexist peacefully, even fall in love. Maybe we inspire others to question their prejudices. Maybe we just live a good life together and that is enough. Either way, I am content." "I am content too," Varka agreed. "More than content. I am happy, truly happy for the first time in my life." Winter settled over the farm, bringing snow and cold winds. Varka and Parker spent the long evenings indoors, staying warm by the fire, cooking together, reading from the small collection of books Parker owned, making plans for the spring planting. It was a peaceful time, almost idyllic, and Varka felt herself relaxing into this new life, letting go of the warrior she had been and embracing the farmer's wife she had become. But peace, as they both knew, was often temporary. The trouble came in early spring, just as the snow began to melt. Varka was working in the barn, repairing tools in preparation for the growing season, when she heard horses approaching. She set down the awl she had been using and walked to the barn door, peering out cautiously. 5 men on horseback, all armed, all wearing grim expressions. Captain Morris was among them, and Varka's stomach sank. This was not a friendly visit. Parker emerged from the house, clearly having heard the riders as well. He walked to meet them, and Varka followed, standing slightly behind him in a show of unity. "Captain Morris," Parker greeted, his tone neutral. "What brings you out here?" "Trouble," the captain replied bluntly. "There has been a major orc raid on a settlement 20 miles south of here. 15 people dead, dozens injured, buildings burned. The survivors are demanding action, and the governor has authorized a sweep of the region to remove any orc presence." Varka felt ice slide down her spine. "I had nothing to do with that raid." "Maybe not," Morris conceded. "But you are still an orc on human land, and the political situation has changed. I have orders to remove you from this property by force if necessary." "No." Parker's voice was flat, absolute. "Varka is my wife. She lives here legally as far as I am concerned. She has harmed no one and has actually saved lives. You have no right to take her." "Wife?" Morris's eyebrows shot up. "You married an orc. Sutton, have you lost your mind?" "I married the woman I love. The fact that she is an orc is irrelevant." "It is very relevant to the people demanding safety from orc attacks." Morris's expression was almost sympathetic. "Look, I understand you care about her, but this situation is bigger than both of you. The political pressure to act against orcs is immense right now. If you refuse to cooperate, I will have to arrest both of you." "On what charge?" Parker demanded. "Harboring an enemy, treason if I stretch the definition. It does not matter. One way or another, the orc is coming with me." The other 4 men spread out slightly, hands on weapons. The message was clear. They were prepared for violence if Parker resisted. Varka stepped forward, placing a hand on Parker's arm. "Do not fight them," she said quietly. "You will only get hurt. I am not letting them take you." Parker's jaw was set, his eyes blazing with determination. "You do not have a choice." Varka turned to face him fully. "I will not let you be arrested or killed because of me. I will go with them." "Varka, no." "Parker, listen to me." She cupped his face with both hands, forcing him to meet her eyes. "This is not over. Whatever they do with me, you can fight it legally, politically. You can gather support, get people like Mrs. Hendren to speak for me. But you cannot do any of that if you are in a cell or dead. Let me go. Trust me." Tears slid down Parker's cheeks, and Varka's heart broke at the sight. "I cannot lose you," he whispered. "You will not." She kissed him fiercely. "I am your wife. Nothing and no one can change that. Now let me go so you can figure out how to get me back." Parker's hands shook as he released her, stepping back. Varka turned to Captain Morris and held out her wrists. "No need for force. I will come peacefully." Morris looked almost relieved as he dismounted and approached with rope. "You are doing the right thing," he said as he bound her wrists, though without the cruelty her own clan had shown. "For what it is worth, I believe you when you say you were not involved in the raid. But politics is politics." They lifted Varka onto a horse, and she took one last look at Parker, at the farm that had become her home, at the life they had built together. Then the horse began to move, and she focused on staying balanced, on not showing fear to these men who expected monsters when they looked at her. The militia took Varka to the regional garrison, a fortified compound that housed soldiers and served as a temporary jail. They locked her in a small cell with stone walls and a barred window, then left her alone. Varka sat on the narrow cot and forced herself to think rationally rather than give in to panic. She had been in worse situations. At least these humans were not planning to execute her immediately. That gave Parker time to work, to find a way to secure her release. She had to trust him, had to believe that their love was strong enough to overcome even this. Days passed in a blur of sameness. Guards brought her food twice a day, basic but edible. No one spoke to her except to give brief orders. She had no idea what was happening outside the cell, whether Parker was making progress or if she would be forgotten here, left to rot in stone and iron. On the 5th day, Captain Morris visited her cell. He stood outside the bars, studying her with an expression she could not quite read. "Your husband has been making quite a fuss," he said without preamble. "He has gathered testimonials from Mrs. Hendren and several others who witnessed you defending humans during that raid. He has petitioned the governor directly for your release. He has even threatened to take his case to the territorial courts if necessary." Hope flared in Varka's chest. And the governor is in a difficult position. Public sentiment is very much against orcs right now, but Parker has managed to gather enough support that simply executing you or keeping you imprisoned indefinitely would cause its own problems. Morris paused. "There is going to be a hearing. You will be allowed to speak in your own defense and witnesses will be called. The governor will make a final decision based on what he hears. When, 3 days from now, I suggest you prepare your testimony carefully." The hearing took place in the garrison's main hall, a large room set up with benches for observers and a raised platform where the governor sat with 2 advisors. Varka was brought in with her wrists still bound, wearing the same clothes she had been arrested in, now rumpled and dirty. She scanned the room and found Parker immediately sitting in the front row, his face drawn but determined. Their eyes met, and Varka drew strength from that connection. Whatever happened, they would face it together. The governor, a middle-aged man with gray hair and a stern expression, called the hearing to order. "We are here to determine whether the orc known as Varka represents a threat to human settlements, and whether her continued presence in our territory should be permitted. Captain Morris, please present your report." Morris stood and outlined the facts. Varka's exile from her clan, her presence on Parker's farm, her actions during the raid on Mrs. Hendren's property, and the recent orc attack that had prompted her arrest. He spoke clinically, without obvious bias, simply laying out the information. When he finished, the governor turned to Varka. "Do you have anything to say in your own defense?" Varka stood as straight as her bound hands allowed. "I do. I was exiled from my clan because I chose mercy over violence, because I refused to kill a human child during a raid. That choice cost me everything I had known, but I would make it again without hesitation. Parker Sutton found me dying at a crossroads and showed me kindness when he had every reason to fear or hate me. In return, I have worked his farm, defended his neighbors, and tried every day to prove that orcs and humans do not have to be enemies." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "I understand the fear humans feel toward my kind. I spent years participating in raids, hurting people, taking what was not mine. I am not proud of that past, but I cannot change it. What I can do is choose differently going forward. I have done that. I have committed my life to peace, to building rather than destroying. All I ask is the chance to continue that path." The governor's expression remained unreadable. "You ask us to trust that one orc has truly changed when generations of conflict suggest otherwise. I ask you to judge me by my actions, not my species," Varka replied. "I fought against orc raiders to defend a human woman. I have harmed no one since coming to Parker's farm. I have a witness who will testify to my character if you will hear her." "We will hear from Mrs. Hendren," the governor agreed. Mrs. Hendren stood and approached the platform, speaking with quiet dignity. "Varka saved my life. When those raiders came to my farm, she could have stood aside or even helped them. Instead, she fought them, risked her own safety to protect me. In the months since, I've gotten to know her better. She is honest, hardworking, and kind. She is also deeply in love with Parker Sutton and he with her. They are married in every way that matters. Separating them or executing her would be a grave injustice." Several other witnesses spoke, some in Varka's favor, some against. The hearing lasted hours, testimonies and arguments flowing back and forth. Through it all, Varka remained standing, refusing to show weakness even as exhaustion and fear took their toll. Finally, the governor held up a hand for silence. "I have heard enough. I will render my decision now." The room went completely quiet. Varka's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. "The evidence suggests that Varka has indeed acted counter to typical orc behavior," the governor said slowly. "She has defended humans, worked peacefully among us, and by multiple accounts has been a positive presence. However, the political reality is that public fear of orcs is at an all-time high following the recent raid. Releasing her without conditions would undermine confidence in our ability to protect our citizens." Varka felt her hope beginning to crumble. "Therefore," the governor continued, "I am issuing the following ruling. Varka will be released into Parker Sutton's custody. She will be required to check in with Captain Morris once per month to confirm she has committed no crimes. Any violation of our laws, any suggestion that she represents a threat, will result in immediate imprisonment and likely execution. Additionally, she will be forbidden from carrying weapons in public and must stay within a 10-mile radius of Parker Sutton's farm unless granted specific permission to travel further." He looked directly at Varka. "These conditions are strict, and they are non-negotiable. But they will allow you to return to your home and your husband. Do you accept these terms?" "I do," Varka said immediately, not caring about the restrictions. She could live with any conditions as long as she could be with Parker. "Then you are free to go. Captain Morris will finalize the paperwork and remove your restraints." The relief was so overwhelming that Varka's knees nearly buckled. Parker was already moving toward her, and the moment Morris cut the ropes binding her wrists, she fell into Parker's arms. He held her so tightly she could barely breathe, and she clung to him just as fiercely. "I thought I had lost you," Parker whispered against her hair. "I thought they were going to kill you. I am here. I am all right. We are all right." Varka pulled back enough to kiss him, not caring that they had an audience, not caring about anything except the fact that they were together again. The journey back to the farm felt like the best trip Varka had ever taken. She rode beside Parker in the wagon, their hands clasped between them, neither willing to let go. When the familiar buildings came into view, Varka felt tears of relief spill down her cheeks. "Welcome home," Parker said softly. That night, they held each other in their bed under the wedding quilt, reaffirming their commitment to each other with words and touches and promises whispered in the darkness. Varka had faced death and imprisonment and emerged on the other side, and her love for Parker had only grown stronger through the trial. In the days and weeks that followed, they fell back into the rhythms of farm life, but something had shifted. Word of the hearing and the governor's decision spread through the region. Some people remained hostile, but others began to see Varka differently, not as a monster but as an individual who had made difficult choices. Mrs. Hendren became a regular visitor, often bringing food or helping with tasks around the farm. Other neighbors began to cautiously reach out, testing the waters. Slowly, very slowly, Varka felt herself being integrated into the human community in ways she had never imagined possible. She dutifully checked in with Captain Morris each month, and over time, even he thawed slightly, acknowledging her consistent compliance with the terms of her release. Spring turned to summer, and the farm flourished under their joint care. Parker taught Varka everything he knew about agriculture, and she proved an eager student, her warrior's discipline translating well to the demands of farming. They worked side by side from dawn to dusk, then spent their evenings planning for the future. One evening in late summer, as they sat on the porch watching fireflies dance in the gathering darkness, Varka said, "I have been thinking about something." "What is that?" Parker asked, his arm around her shoulders. About starting a family, about children. Varka felt nervous saying it aloud, unsure how Parker would react. I know it is complicated, that a child of mixed heritage would face challenges neither of us can fully predict, but I want to build a future with you that includes more than just the two of us. Parker was quiet for a moment and Varka's anxiety spiked. Then he turned to her with a smile that lit up his entire face. I have been thinking about that too, he admitted. I want children with you. I want to raise them to be kind and brave like their mother, to see the world as a place where different peoples can coexist and even thrive together. Varka kissed him, pouring all her love and gratitude into the contact. Then let us try. Let us build that future together. The months that followed were filled with joy and anticipation. Varka discovered she was pregnant in the autumn, and the news filled them both with a combination of excitement and fear. No one they knew had ever heard of a human orc child. They had no idea what to expect, whether the pregnancy would proceed normally, what the child might look like, but they faced the uncertainty together as they faced everything. Mrs. Hendren connected them with a midwife who, while initially skeptical, agreed to help. The midwife, a no-nonsense woman named Ruth, examined Varka regularly and declared that despite the unusual circumstances, the pregnancy seemed healthy. Winter came again, and Varka's belly swelled with new life. She had to stop doing the heavier farm work, much to her frustration, but Parker took over those tasks without complaint. They spent the long, cold evenings preparing for the baby, making tiny clothes, setting up a cradle that Parker built with his own hands. The baby came on a snowy night in late winter, arriving after a long and difficult labor that left Varka exhausted but triumphant. Ruth placed the squalling infant in Varka's arms, and she looked down at her daughter with overwhelming love. The baby had green-tinted skin, lighter than Varka's but definitely not fully human. Her ears were slightly pointed, and when she yawned, tiny bumps were visible where tusks might grow in later. But she was perfect, absolutely perfect, a living symbol of everything Varka and Parker had built together. She is beautiful, Parker breathed, touching his daughter's tiny hand with one finger. The baby's fist closed around it immediately, gripping tight. What should we name her? Varka asked. They had discussed names endlessly, but never settled on anything. Now, looking at their daughter, Parker said, Hope. Let us call her Hope because that is what she represents. Hope for a better future where humans and orcs can create something beautiful together. Hope, Varka repeated, testing the name. I love it. Hope Sutton. Raising Hope proved to be both challenging and rewarding in equal measure. As she grew, it became clear she had inherited traits from both parents. She was stronger than a human child her age, but not as strong as a full orc would be. Her ears were pointed, her skin had a greenish tint, and small tusks did eventually emerge from her lower jaw, but her features were softer, more human than orc. The community's reaction to Hope was mixed. Some neighbors welcomed her, bringing gifts and congratulations. Others kept their distance, uncertain or disapproving. But as Hope grew from infant to toddler to young child, her sweet nature and bright intelligence won over even some of the skeptics. Captain Morris, during one of Varka's monthly check-ins, actually smiled at Hope when she waved at him. She is a beautiful child, he acknowledged. Quite the little miracle. She is, Varka agreed, bouncing her daughter on her hip. Our miracle. Years passed, each one building on the foundation Varka and Parker had created. The farm prospered, their daughter thrived, and slowly but surely, attitudes in the region began to shift. The sight of Varka working in the fields or visiting the market became normal rather than shocking. Parents pointed her out to their children, as proof that orcs were not all monsters. There were still difficulties, still moments when old prejudices flared up, or when news of orc raids in other regions made people nervous. But Varka and Parker weathered these storms together, their love providing an anchor in uncertain times. On their 10th wedding anniversary, they stood together at the same spot by the stream where Parker had proposed. Hope, now 7 years old, played nearby, chasing butterflies through the long grass. "You ever regret it?" Varka asked, watching their daughter with a soft smile. "Choosing this life, all the complications that came with loving an orc." Parker pulled her close, kissing her temple. "Not for a single second. You and Hope are the best things that ever happened to me. This life we have built together is worth every challenge we have faced." Varka leaned into his embrace, feeling completely content. She thought back to that day at the crossroads, to the sign that had declared her worthless, to the despair that had consumed her. If someone had told her then that she would find love, build a family, and help change minds about what was possible between humans and orcs, she never would have believed them. But here she was, surrounded by love, raising a daughter who represented hope for the future, married to a man who saw her true worth when the rest of the world saw only a monster. "I love you," she said, simple words that carried the weight of everything she felt. "I love you too," Parker replied. "Always have, always will." Hope ran over to them, her small tusks visible as she grinned. "Mama, Papa, look what I found." She held up a smooth river stone worn by water into a perfect oval. "Is it not pretty?" "It is beautiful, sweetling," Varka said, crouching down to admire the stone properly. "Just like you." Hope beamed and threw her arms around Varka's neck in an enthusiastic hug. Parker joined them, wrapping his arms around both his wife and daughter, and for a perfect moment, the three of them stood together in the golden afternoon light, a family bound by love that had transcended every boundary placed before it. The future was uncertain, as futures always are. There would be more challenges, more obstacles to overcome. But Varka knew with absolute certainty that they would face everything together, that the love they shared was strong enough to weather any storm. She was no longer the exiled warrior left to die at a crossroads with a sign declaring her worthless. She was Varka Sutton, wife and mother, farmer and friend, living proof that worth was not determined by species or clan or anyone's judgment except your own. She had found her place in the world, found people who loved her unconditionally, found a purpose that filled her with joy rather than emptying her with violence. As they walked back to the farmhouse together, Hope skipping ahead while Parker's hand stayed warm in hers, Varka felt grateful for every step of the journey that had brought her here. The pain, the exile, the fear, all of it had been necessary to lead her to this moment, this life, this love. And she would not change a single thing.